here. I'm sure people are still going to file in, but we'll go ahead and get started. And to those on the call, keep in mind this call is going to be recorded. So with that in mind, in all ATS universities, we do have everyone muted upon entry, but you'll be available to interact with us via the chat or the Q&A fields. I'll keep an eye on that as we go. For those that may or may not know, my name is Zach Allison with ATS Spec. I've been our national sales manager here for about a decade and a half now. And for a long chunk of that, we've had Zoeller pumps on our system. One of the nice aspects of the ATS Spec program is how we always put together the right pieces and products to make sure you have a complete configuration. And that goes right down to pumps. We've been doing a lot of work to make sure that the right pumps are matching with your amp and voltages to ensure that you have an ease of selection there. So as you go through and select your pump, you get the right panel. Well, we had a lot of new coding and data to work with over the last year, as Zoeller introduced a new control panel, the pivot panel, which we're going to go into the details today. With me is Jeff from the Zoeller team. He's the marketing manager and is here to go over the process. So thanks for joining us, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome, Zach. Appreciate the invite. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your engineers. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, we've always had a lot of great interaction during the Zoeller sizing discussions in the past. This is going to be a little bit different because it's not really focused on sizing as much, but a lot more of the product details. But there's a lot that goes into control panels to make sure you get the right one to work with the right pump. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of interaction. I'll keep an eye on the chat and the QA fields and let you dive into the presentation today.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So as Zach said, I'm the controls marketing manager, product manager here at Zoeller, and we're going to be talking about our new product line called Pivot. We've sold traditional control panels for decades. We get those from vendors, and this is our entry into the market where we're making control panels. So panels that you can stock. And I'm going to go through the reasons why that's true rather than waiting to order until you know what the pump is or selecting features. We've made the process infinitely easier, and we cover a lot more of the reasons you want a panel, a lot of the diagnosis, and it's just got a lot more tech built in without it being complicated. It is sophisticated, but it's not complicated. I'm going to show you a few things that you're going to be surprised that a traditional panel falls short, where they fall short, including the ones we still carry. So this isn't slighting other people. This is slighting even our current offering of traditional panels, because when you have a computer built into a control panel, you can do a lot more things.
I think that's a great point. And I know I've put together pump packages with the panels for a number of the folks on the call here. And some of those panels, the options, there's 15, 20 different options of configurations. You're going through the details, trying to make sure you get all the different features in there. And one thing I love about the Pivot panel from what I've seen so far is how easy it is to get all those options.
That's right. Exactly. So I'm going to go to the first slide here. This is just what I plan to cover. And by the way, I may go back and forth a couple times. I'm not sure, but I have a PowerPoint, and then I also have a panel sitting in front of me that I'll turn my computer's camera on. So we'll go back and forth just if it feels right that I need to point a couple things out, and really basically so that you can kind of see one and what it looks like powered up. So the Pivot that's kind of our generic name for it, but there is a model called Pivot. There's also a model called Pivot Pro. There's actually now a model called Pivot Pro Plus. So those are 3 different levels, kind of, with features, kind of like if you were buying a car, it's the L, the LE, and the LTZ or something. So and they have, there are different levels of features, but they also have you can't get a pivot in 3-phase, for example, but we'll look at that in a minute. We're going to look at some functionality and what the really important features are, the things that really set apart a pivot from a traditional panel. And we'll go over, I'll show you that some of the sales literature, quick start guide, things like that. We're not going to go into detail or anything about it, but I'm going to just show you screenshots of it so that you know the kinds of things that are available to you. And then, as Zach mentioned, we'll do a Q&A. And I think Zach is probably going to, insert questions here and there as we go as well, which would be fine. So feel free, ask away. Here's your traditional panels. Now these are very basic. These are the two most common panels that we have sold over the decades. On the left is a single phase duplex. On the right is a single phase simplex. Nothing fancy here, just the basics. Land your switches, land your power. You've got in the upper left corner, you've got of the left-hand panel, the duplex panel, you've got 2 circuit breakers. On the upper right, you've got 2 contactors. You've got a board with some HOAs, which stands for handoff auto. And you have the terminal strips where you're landing everything. So real easy, real simple, relatively inexpensive. Now, if you need something additional added to those panels, this is the kind of thing you have to go through. You take a sheet like this. I know you can't read it, but you might read it if you get real close. But there's lots of options there. And every time you add an option, you make the price higher, you change the part number, and you have to wait for that panel to be built. Now, in Zoeller's world, let's say we have 200 different model numbers and those of pumps, I'm saying. So those pumps come in different configurations and variations, and the customer may want this or that feature. You as the engineer may be speccing something that's required. All those things change that panel, and you end up with variations. Right now, we have 3,600 variations doing panels the old way. That's how many panels it takes to cover our 200 pump models. And I'm making those, the 200, I'm making that number up because I don't know the exact number of pump models, but the 3,600 is not a made up number. If we were to cover all those pumps with the way pivots are built, the way they're optioned, et cetera, it only takes about 160 panels to cover everything. Now, you might say, well, that's great. You guys don't have as much variation in your panels. What's that do for me? That's a huge benefit to our customers. When I used to be a contractor, I never stocked a panel. And the reason I never stocked panels is because I never knew what I was going to need. If pivot existed back then, I would stock everything I need because I only used, maybe 6 different models of pumps. And therefore I only had about maybe a dozen different panels, depending whether they're simplex, duplex. If maybe not even that. So it now makes it possible for me to stock it. Also makes it very possible for my wholesaler to stock it. The whole thing, the bottom line is it makes the availability of panels extremely improved.
Yeah, we never care about delivery and stocking at wholesalers until the spec has gone out, and then they're trying to find out, trying to get the product actually to site, and you find out that it's not in stock and you're 6 to 8 weeks late. Exactly. So having a stocking wholesaler is a huge concept.
And if you think about it, it's better at our end too, because we're manufacturing a set number of panels and panel variations. So we can go ahead and do that. We don't have to wait and risk, something sitting on our shelf for 2 years. It's not gonna. We know. So this is better for everybody, the way that this has been designed. So we're going to make most of the options on that previous sheet of paper standard. That's what reduces all those item numbers and improves the availability to your customers. Everything's not everything, but most things in the panel are computer controlled. So we actually, in the design of this, we tackled a bunch of problems in the field that contractors have complained about for decades. And I'll hit on a couple of those in a bit. We built in a lot of diagnostics, and we're monitoring all the conditions. We're maintaining the price for the most part. So even those simple panels, most people want the simple panel and don't have to add options. So our panels, fully optioned, have to be pretty close to the price of that simple panel, or we're not going to sell any panels. So that was kind of that was a requirement from the beginning, was to make sure that these panels, it doesn't do any of us any good if they're twice as much money, and they're not. In some cases, they're a few percentage points more. Some cases they're actually less. They're compact in size, and this is a big thing. I put it in bold, increase the size of the font, prioritize running pumps. Now, to most of you, that's going to sound ridiculous, because of course a panel prioritizes running pumps, but I'm going to show you why the traditional panels that we've sold and everybody else sells don't prioritize running pumps. Just a quick picture of Pivot versus Pivot Pro. The panel that's sitting in front of me, when I change to my camera, is the Pivot Pro, the one on the right there. But Pivot would be a single phase only. There's no LCD on the interface. There's no ability to plug in a gateway to have Z Control, which is our IoT platform. And it's a little bit more cumbersome to make changes. You can make all the changes, but you have to use a USB, like a thumb drive, to plug it into the USB port. On the right, you'll see Pivot Pro. Has all those other, it's single phase and three phase. Has the menu and the buttons so that you can navigate through a menu, and that gets you statistics, counters, all the ability to change configuration settings. It's all right there at your fingertips, instead of having to put it on a thumb drive and insert it into the USB. There's additional features, the seal fail monitoring, which would be monitoring the moisture seals inside of, or moisture sensors inside of the pumps. If you're monitoring a thermal, if you can plug in a gateway to connect it to the cloud. So those are all things that are just part of the Pivot Pro build. Now, one thing we did in anticipation of having a much more thought out control panel line is to think out how we number those panels. And I'm only going to spend a second on this, but I want to point it out, because from the part number, it's 5 digits - 4 digits. That's how all the pivots are. That's how all the pivots are numbered. Those first 5 digits mean something. They're meaningful. And if you look at this document, which we call FM3297, you can see what those first 5 digits mean. And that's kind of important, because if somebody has a certain pump, I can tell you the part number, mainly because I have this chart memorized. I don't think most people do, but just by looking at the chart, you can kind of come up with the part number that you're going to need. And that helps you give a double check, by the way, later. Like if you see an order for the panel, or somebody's asking about it, and you see a 1 in the second place, that you see where that second X is, it says number of pumps, and you see a 1, and this is a duplex station or a reversing station, that's wrong. So it's a good double check, making sure you're getting the right equipment. Inside the panel on the door, the inner door, you're going to have a kind of the regular stuff. You've got the schematic, got a manufacturing sticker, shows you voltage, part number, rev, all that kind of thing. They are UL listed, CL certified. They're also FCC listed, because we are, after all, creating interference. Because it's an electronic product. We're also connecting to the cloud. There's a bunch of rules for that. So all that certification wording is in the panel. But then you'll notice that there's a QR code in there. We've started doing that more often with our products, even our pumps on our tags. We have a QR code. Now in the Pivot world, that QR code is even more useful, because it's going to take you to a web page for Pivot that has all the assets. So it's not just for sales. This is what we pictured is a lot of people coming up on a panel in alarm, perhaps opening the door and going, "What the heck is this? I've never seen this before." And they're going to see that QR code, and I think that kind of tells somebody, "Oh, if I'm going to be able to get more information there." So, and that's exactly what it's for. it has everything at that page. All the assets that we created for Pivot are there, including schematics. There isn't a link to videos yet, but there will be. But every other helpful piece of, whether it's a sales literature or technical data sheet or a quick start guide, the full-blown installation instructions, it's all there. On that same sticker, right now, that's an old version of the sticker in the picture there, but there's a bunch of prompts there too. So we all know, as people that spec products and are instructing people how to put products in, we want them to do a startup and to record certain data. The new sticker, the revised sticker, has more lines, and it's basically prompting them. It says, hey, write down the pump model number, write down the measured voltage, the measured load amps that the pump is pulling. So it's prompting them for that information that's, maybe doesn't help them right that minute. It could if there's something wrong, but it certainly is going to help the next person that comes along this panel and has to do service. Just a schematic example. I think we have about a dozen different schematics now for Pivot. They're pretty straightforward. They show the wiring and just generally how everything that isn't inside the secret black box works. Just a close-up of the interface that's on Pivot Pro. We're gonna look at 4 different categories of how the Pivot Pro technology is helping you, is improving how we manage pumps and how that helps you as well. So data recording, the diagnostics and alarms, the configurability, and the problem solving. So data recording. It used to be in a traditional panel, not used to be, it still is for everything except Pivot. You have to, if you want a counter of some sort, whether that's a cycle counter, an elapsed time meter, those are all the kinds of things that you have to add as an option. They aren't included. So all of that stuff is included, just standard. Even in the panels that don't have a screen, the data's there. You just have to pull it off with a thumb drive. But obviously Pivot Pro is, I'm always going to default to talking about Pivot Pro because it's got the screen. It makes everything easier. The USB does allow you to pull data. It allows you to set a configuration. And it also, if you needed an update for something special in the field, we can put that on a thumb drive or on a text file, basically, email that to you. The user puts it on a thumb drive, sticks it in the USB port, and now you can update that panel to behave the way you need it to for a custom application. Now, what I'm not saying is that you call us and we can send a file out right away. There's a process there. But it also enables us to, if there was ever a firmware fix that needed to occur, that's an easy way to make that happen. People aren't having to send panels back or take parts out. It's all just accessible through a thumb drive. And then online, if somebody has the Wi-Fi gateway which is an accessory, they're going to be able to access even more information online. You're going to get into an alert history. Some of the configuration settings can be changed online instead of through the menu. You can remotely silence an alarm, a system that's in alarm. You can imagine how many times that would come in handy. And that everything that's online, we're not going to get into that a whole lot today, or really not really at all, but that's a whole separate webinar. But the features and the advantages of being online, they're great now, but they're going to keep expanding. So we're working on cycle durations and seeing a history of, let's say your last 10 cycles. And if an aberration happens, that there's, maybe something going on, trending analysis, all these kinds of things. By the way, we don't charge for any of that. So you have to buy the little gateway that makes it possible. But once you buy that gateway, and it's not that expensive, the users of Z Control, nobody pays for that. Now we're going to have a paid level of service for power users, as we would like to call them. You know, people that have 100 devices out there and they've really adopted the platform. They may have a need for a more dynamic, powerful interface, and we are developing that right now. So that's data recording and kind of being able to view the data that's being recorded. Diagnostics and alarms. There's more than I can list here, but these are kind of the big ticket ones that people always want to make sure that that their panels have. Yes, you have a high water alarm. I'm gonna cover what a smart HOA is, but the bottom line is you're going to get an alarm if somebody accidentally leaves an HOA set to off, and goes to lunch or goes home for the night. Instead of getting a phone call that there's a flood and property damage because they forgot, somebody's going to get an alarm by default. In 4 hours, they're going to get an alarm. Not that the panel's going to revert to auto, because there's a liability issue to do that, but it's going to at least alarm and say, hey, somebody maybe forgot about me. Am I supposed to be off still? There's a continuous run alarm. So if a pump runs continuously for a set amount of time, there's an alarm. Tripped overloads, bad contactors, seal fail, which is your moisture sensor monitoring, thermal overload, float switch errors. Float switch errors is a big one, because right now traditional control panels, it's a relay logic is what how we kind of nickname that. It doesn't know if a float comes up out of order. It doesn't know if a float has ceased to work because it's stuck, and that causes big issues. So those are the kinds of things that are just built right in to every single pivot. The configurability of the panel is huge. This is a big deal. It makes these very flexible. We set them by default to a list of defaults, but if somebody needs it to be a 4 float instead of the 3 float default, they can do that. If they need the float order to be stop lead high lag instead of stop lead lag lag high, for example, you can change the float order. You can change whether alarms are latching or active. These are all, sometimes they're behaviors, but sometimes, or desired behaviors, but sometimes they're actual requirements based on code. So all of it becomes not something it no longer has to be the way the panel's built. It now can just be changed. So your panel that you sell to this project is the same panel you sell to this project, because you just change those settings.
It's great timing. And it's funny because the 3 or 4 float question has come up in just about every presentation we've done on pumps. And, I understand there's some differences across the border, but having that flexibility is fantastic. It's great timing because I just had a chat question come in on that. So perfectly timed there.
Perfect. Great. I'm going to go to the 4th section here, and then I'm going to go back to these slides and give you a couple examples. So hopefully that works out okay here. So problem solving, the alarms latch, or they can latch. By default, I think most of them latch. So what do I mean by that? That means the high water float comes up, the alarms are going, and people are like, they're either wondering what that alarm is, or nobody's home to hear it. And now the alarm condition goes away, the float goes down. Guess what happens on our panels now? The alarm, the notification goes away. There is no globe, there is no more alarm. It just ceases to exist. So either somebody doesn't now know what that alarm was, or they never knew there was an alarm in the first place because nobody heard it. So now we latch alarms. So there may be a float fault, there may be a high water condition, there may be a continuous run. Those are all things we want to know about. And I would think that whoever's, the superintendent, the caretaker of the lift station is going to want to know those things. Obviously, if it's a connected product and it's in the cloud, you're also going to get text and email and everything else. But locally to the panel, we don't want those alarms disappearing, never to have been seen. Turn a duplex into a simplex in 6 seconds. So Some people probably already maybe know what I mean, but if you never worked in the field, you might not know what I'm referring to there. Those of us that worked in the field became infuriated, not only that high water alarms didn't latch, but that I've got a duplex panel or system. I've got a pump down. It's going to take me a few days to get apart. I have to rewire all the switches on a traditional panel so that I don't create alarms every time that panel wanted to run the pump that's down. Now it's just a matter of pushing a button on a duplex. You just push it, you tell it, hey, this pump's out of commission. You're now a Simplex, and it won't give kind of erroneous alarms for the pump that we already know is down. Smart HOA. HOA is handoff auto. If I put a pump into hand, I'm not going to accidentally I may accidentally forget I put it in hand and walk away or go to lunch or whatever, but now I'm not burning out a pump because that hand has a time limit. Default is 5 minutes. You can make it whatever you want, but we're saving pumps now from being burned out, and then the contractor comes back and, you know, his mistake now becomes embarrassment, and there's a cover up that ensues. So let's avoid that altogether and just put a time limit on it. If he needs to run it again for 5 more minutes, he just pushes the button again. It's real simple. The off, I covered it a minute ago, but it's basically, hey, don't forget I'm off alarm, and that it's set for 4 hours as a default. It can be anything. You're basically just pushing the button till you see the service off light. Now, if I've got a pump, I gave the example of turning a duplex into a simplex. Well, if I have a pump that I want to turn to off, but I don't want it to alarm in 4 hours or whatever the setting is, then what I do is, instead of pushing the button and waiting for the light to come on for service off, I hold the button. And I'm doing this very intentionally, right? I have to hold it for 6 seconds. And now that service off blinks, and my little label there says, if it's blinking, it's in permanent off. That just means I'm not going to get an alarm. And that's good, because if I know I'm going to be gone for a couple of days getting a pump or a part or whatever it is, I don't want the property owner to get an alarm. So I can avoid that phone call. But I had to do it intentionally is the point. I had to hold it for 6 seconds. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving these contractors, the guys in the field that are having to take care of this. We don't want to leave them guessing. We want the tech to have info. I'm going to go back here. There's a couple things I wanted to mention. So the last bullet on this screen says float switch errors. You know what? I think this would be better to switch to video right here. Let me do that. Takes just a second. How's that? We got a good video?
Yep, looking good.
Panel. Okay. So this is what the panels look like. I got my pointer here. It's kind of weird, I know. Here's my HOA 1 and HOA 2. This green button is your mode button. So the thing I wanted to point out, and I said earlier, I said about how we want to prioritize running pumps. If you've got a lift station, everything is working. That lift station, I don't know how much they cost. Let's say it was $30,000. You've got two duplex, you got two pumps in duplex, you got a big station, you got rails, you got a panel, but the low float, the stop float, let's say that got stuck. I wonder if everybody on this call realizes that with a traditional panel, no pumps will work. Doesn't matter if the other floats come up or not. If that stop float isn't up, if it got stuck, everything is defeated. And the first phone call the contractor gets is a flood, a high water alarm, everything's backing up. Now, to me, that seems ridiculous. And I used to get aggravated about it in the field. But you're looking at, on my screen right there, you're looking at a control panel that is basically run by a computer. So since we're run by a computer, we can overcome a stuck stop float. And I'm going to go around to the other side and show you what that means. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, audio is still sounding okay.
All right, so we've got a stop float here. Let's assume that that was stuck and we're only going to lift the lead float. Now, normally the alarm would be going off. I have it unplugged so that you're not suffering. But notice, I don't know if you heard the contactor pull in, but the pump is running right now. Contactor pulls in, runs the pump. I've got an alarm. I've got a horn. I have my stop LED here is blinking red. I don't know if that comes through on the screen. And my LCD screen here says alarms, float 1. I let it down. These are narrow angle floats, so I don't turn it off immediately. I give it a 10-second runtime so that we don't short cycle pumps. And now I turn it off. There we go. But now later, somebody calls and says, hey, the alarm's going off. When I come and I open this door, I see float 1 is in fault. I see the LED on the stop float is blinking red. I know what's wrong. I know something happened with this float. But the point is, I prioritize running pumps. I still had an input. I know I can turn a pump on because this float came up. All those other control panels out there that we're all selling, there would have been a flood in this situation, or close to a flood anyway. All right, I'm going to reset it just by holding down the silence button. Same thing here. If I've got a stuck stop and a stuck lead, I go to high. Again, I've got an alarm. I've got a blow. I've got a high water red. I've got stop and lead blinking red. Now, when I let it down, it's going to be a 20-second. It's going to let the pump run for 20 seconds. Actually, I reset it, so it didn't go 20 seconds. But I just wanted to show you that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I wanted to show you that because that, to me, that's worth the price of admission right there. Just even if it was more money, that feature is going to save people's property. So let me.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. All the features that you've gone over so far are things that I honestly would have expected. None
Exactly.
of them are like, oh wow, this is a game-breaking thing. It's how I would expect the panel and pump to run.
Exactly.
And I think that's a lot. It's just some common sense features that are being built into, taking an old design and bringing it into a new age.
That's right. And, leveraging technology to be able to achieve it because you couldn't do it before.
Yeah.
So while I've got this screen up, Zach, is there any interface questions that anybody might have just by chance? Because I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint.
We'll give it a second for any kind of questions on the pump or the interface to come in. I know one question that's come up in all of my discussions on it. We talk about the Z control. Always the question is, well, what if they just want the typical BACnet? They want to tie it into their BAS system, not a third-party site. Is that an option?
Yeah, it is. So this green wire here, this is it's plugging into a Cat5 or it's a Cat5 cable plugging into an RJ45 jack on the board. But you also have right here, you have dry contacts. So the dry contacts, the ones on this board are for any alarm that's created. Like any of them will change the state of those contacts. But the contactors themselves for the pumps also have dry contacts. So you have basically 3 sets of dry contacts. You've got alarm dry contacts and you've got pump run on each contactor. So you just bring a pair of wires from those into your BAS to do your monitoring. It's not fully integrated and fully two-way conversation like a Z control connection would be, where you through our mobile app or through the website, you'd be able to actually change settings and silence an alarm and those kinds of things. But at least it gives you the information that there's an alarm occurring or pumps are turning on and off.
Yeah, there's additional benefits to the Z control for sure. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in yet. Okay. I guess one of the other things I would bring up, because I thought it was, again, one of those simple features that you just kind of expect, but are shocked to learn that it's not. How would you take it from the duplex to the simplex? Is that something you can easily show?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me go back to that. Sorry, I think I already changed. Did I already change to the?
Yeah, we're back on the slides now.
Okay, let me go back here. All right. So in this mode, it's in duplex right now. But if I want to, like, let's say pump 2 goes bad. If I just hold that, there's my red light. It's off. If I were to let go right now, it'd be a 4-hour timer. But I held it. Now it's blinking. It's now a simplex panel. It's as simple as that.
So if they, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, there's an issue in a pump and they need to take it out of the station and replace it, they press and hold that button, lift up the pump, replace it, and drop in the new one, and you're still going to at least have a simplex operating.
That's right. But now, just to be careful, and I'm sure a couple engineers are already screaming at their screens, you're going to power this all down before you get into the pit.
Of course.
Let's be clear about that. But when you power it back up, yes, you would just put it into simplex by doing that. Now you can, there's also a simplex mode that you can go into. This is kind of like creating a simplex behavior, but there's actually a simplex mode inside running through the menu items. And it's worth noting also, it's not just simplex mode. We even allow for, so yes, this is a duplex panel you're looking for, but we distinguish between alternating and duplex. Some people might say, well, that's the same thing. Alternating will only alternate pumps. Duplex will alternate pumps, but also if a lag float comes in, we'll run pumps simultaneously. So that's the difference to us, that in our world, in our terminology, you can choose all. By default, it comes as duplex, because I think that's what most people think of, that if you had a lag float come up, you could have 2 pumps running at the same time. But there's plenty of situations where you don't ever want that happening because somebody didn't do the power right, or it's insufficient at the moment, or it's discharging. You don't want 2 pumps discharging to the same place for some reason. There are examples of where you don't want that. You would change that from the default of duplex to alternating. By the way, alternating has always meant a ratio of 1-to-1. We thought, well, why does it have to be 1-to-1? If I have a duplex station for my house that's taking care of my house, I want any ratio except 1-to-1. And people are like, what are you talking about? Why would you do, why is that? Because I want one pump to wear out well in advance of the other pump. I don't want to run the risk that in that same week that a pump fails, the other pump fails. So I'm going to do, a 7-to-1 or a 20-to-1 or something like that. And that is all you have to do is get into the menu, and there's a spot where you see ratio and you just change the numbers. And by default, it's 1-to-1, and you change it to whatever you want. And those of you that are thinking through that a little bit might realize what that means. That means you don't need a lead lag selector switch anymore. You don't have to option that out in your panel. That's what that does. It's built right in. Not only can you do a lead lag setup, but now your lead pump, which is running all the time, say you have it set 99-to-1, your lag pump gets an exercise cycle once every 100 cycles instead of just sitting there dormant forever. So all of this has been thought through. It's all built in. Makes it easy to spec as well, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, you don't have to list out all the additional options. They are just included.
Yeah, you just say pivot.
Pivot Pro.
Pivot Pro, yeah.
There you go.
Let me see, let me get back to.
Yeah, no other questions coming in on the interface, so I think we can jump back to the deck.
All right. So we left off here. I think we've covered everything on these slides. So maybe not in detail, but the device, I don't know if anybody noticed, there was a device sitting on top of the panel. That's the gateway. It's just a couple, like 3 inches by 3 inches, little square. It can fit right inside the panel. You can close the door with it inside. You would do that if wherever the panel is going to live, if there's a Wi-Fi signal right there, that would be fine to do it that way. If there isn't a Wi-Fi signal where the panel's going to live, then you got to think about that ahead of time, where you're going to put that device so that it's within a Wi-Fi network range. But once you have that set up, everything's remote. You can set up your text, your email. There's a mobile app, so you can do the push notifications, and it's all configurable and easy to manage. And in our cloud platform, that environment allows users to have as many locations as they want, as many devices as they want. They can organize and name things however they want. So it's super flexible. And the reason it's super flexible, by the way, is we made the whole thing. Like we didn't subcontract it out or anything. We write all our firmware, we design all of our circuitry, we write the backbone of all these cloud applications. So it's all Zoeller. And that makes it very modifiable and customizable. And if something breaks, we can fix it. And those are all good things. And I'll just run through a few assets here. I know we're probably getting short on time, but this is a sales sheet, kind of front and back. This is more salesmanship-y, if that's a word. You got pivot on the front, pivot pro on the back. Maybe what folks in this webinar are more interested in would be something like this, a technical data sheet. This particular one is 4 pages long. I don't have all 4 pages here, but that's going to show you charts and graphs, and there's lists of part numbers and diagrams of what all the different things inside the panel are, like in a drawing format instead of the 4-color, sales thing. In addition to there being a full-blown, 12 to 20 page installation instructions, we started doing this, and this is new for Zoeller. We've never used to do this. This is a quick start guide. So Pivot Pro, it's 2 pages, front and back. Here's how you install it. Flowchart on the back on that second page, a startup flowchart and a troubleshooting flowchart. I'm not saying it's exhaustive, but it covers probably the most questions that anybody's going to have. Makes it, we still recommend that the first time you do read that instructions, but then after that, after you've kind of consumed that, the quick reference guide is probably enough for most people. We have cross-reference sheets. We're more than happy to share that. We have just this week, or actually it'll probably be next week, we have a thorough panel selection guide. So no matter which pump you're using, you just look up the pump model number and you can see which pivot and Pivot Pro panel would apply.
And I guess on that sheet, and tying it into the question that just came up, you'll cover kind of indoor versus outdoor applications, right? Because the panel can go, there's a version that would be outdoor rated, right?
They're all outdoor rated. It's NEMA 4X boxes on everything, which I believe in Canada is somebody might need to correct me here. I think it's EMAC 6. Does that sound right? Or maybe it's 2.
I'm not sure, but that I do
it's
know
the equivalent to our NEMA
the,
4X.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like how we can equate kilometers to miles. We definitely include the NEMA 4X as well.
Yeah, so they're all fine for outdoor. We don't even have an enclosure option at this point. We're considering, because we just make it, in the old days, you made a NEMA 1 and a NEMA 4X because the NEMA 1 was, pennies, dollars, whatever, cheaper. These days, it's a gasket and, maybe a slightly different material. It's just not that big of a difference anymore. And we just decided to make it simpler for everybody, make them all 4X.
Well, and that goes back to the stocking wholesaler or stocking contractor idea, right? Would you rather have, a 1% cheaper because you saved on a gasket, but have to stock additional models, or not have a stocking wholesaler because there's too many SKUs?
I mean, if the 4X enclosures would have been twice as much money, let's say, as a NEMA 1, then maybe you do it. But they're close enough where, yeah, exactly what you said. It just makes everything simpler.
It's providing value all around.
There's a comparison sheet on the back of that cross-reference sheet. This is just like a features comparison. I know it's too small to read in in our deck here, but all the different marketing and literature resources that are available. So keep in mind, these are all the things that are also available on that QR code page. So when you scan that and go to the web page, those are the things you're going to see. Timeline, we don't anybody out there think that you're a guinea pig. We didn't just start this. Yes, we're new to control panels, relatively speaking, making control panels, I should say. Well, and even that isn't true. We make our control panels at Tulsar Industries up in Canada. So they're actually made in Canada. The ones for the US we import them back here for our own use. But we own Tulsar. Tulsar is part of the Zoeller companies, and that's where the panels are made. They've been making panels for decades, mostly big custom control panels, but even the pivot products we've been selling since January of 21. We did that. We did a growing rollout, I guess you could say. So we started small, just a few reps, and kind of expanded that. So obviously it's nationwide now and international. And just last month, we introduced our first Pivot Pro Plus panels, which would be a Pivot Pro, but in a bigger box so that it can accommodate extra equipment. In this case, it was the start kit panels. So single phase pumps that need external start kits, we now make the Pivot Pro Plus panels for those pumps. Next is reversing. That'll be a couple months from now. And then we'll hopefully round out the rest of the panels by the end of the year. That's, I think, about all that's about all I've got from a deck and video, but I'm happy to go back to the video if you need to, depending what kind of questions you're getting. But let's tackle some questions if there are any.
Yeah, we'll give it a question or a minute here to see if questions come in on the product. I think it's one of those things that it's almost so simple that I don't end up with at the end of these presentations with a lot of questions on this one, because it is just so forward thinking. I think one thing I'll note as well, that cross-reference, or like the cross-reference of the features guide, that'll be included to all attendees with the copy of the presentation as part of our typical follow-up procedure for any of our ATS universities. And one of the number one questions I get is, will this be sending out a certificate of attendance so that they can put in their hours for the new CPD program? And absolutely, we'll have that out to you by the end of the week. I guess while we're waiting for questions, and maybe you can keep an eye on questions, and what I'll do is show how you can make sure you get the right Pivot Pro with the right pump on ATS spec. I'll take over the screen sharing here for a second. Should be able to see my screen now.
I don't think so.
You may need to stop sharing for a second.
Oh, I have to stop sharing. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
All right.
So here we are. I've already got a project made, because I always anticipate they're going to be a little bit late. That's my typical run time. I don't know if it's my job as the host. I interject a little bit much, but we ran through it today. So I've got my Zoeller pivot panel project created. I've already downloaded a couple formats, but what I want to do is show kind of just how easy it is to find the product and pair the panel with the pump. So we have our J6292. I'm going to delete that from the project file here and just show you, because it'll even show you what it'd be like if we were starting fresh. If we went back to our dashboard, it'd be the same process as if we were creating a new project, a new spec, so like a single selection or our master. I'm going to show my project page here, where you can see the pivot panel project I've already got created, and click on that. And there you can see, again, I'm in with the selections that we've made. I'll hit the plus button to add a new one. And one of the great features we've launched recently, because we do have a big breadth of product on here now. If you got your pins here, so we can pin your favorite and most used products or unpin as you need. So if we wanted to, let's take the pump pin out, but I can search for pumps and I'll pin my pumps. I could pin my switches or my floats. If we go into accessories, and then I can deselect that, and those are all going to be at the top here. So nice and clean and easy to find your favorite product categories on the site. We can click into the category. I said it was the 6292, so you can find that a few different ways. You could, filter down by horsepower. You could filter down by, your voltages. You could filter by pump category or type. I'm going to search for the model number that we were just mentioning as well. You can search within the category. So if you have an idea, like, oh, I know, Zach mentioned it was the 6292 series, but I can't remember which one. So I'm going to hit open up here and open up our 200 volt. You can go through and select all your different options. You can also hit select most popular, and it'll take our most specified version of this product and put it in there. And then you could adjust as needed. So if you wanted to switch to like the bronze vortex impeller versus the standard cast iron vortex impeller, or toggle off your moisture sensing, but we're going to include that because it ties in, like we mentioned, we can get that moisture sensing within the panel now. So may as well include it on the pump. We'll add that, and it's going to show the appropriate panels that would match this product. So you'll see we do have the old panels at 10, 11, 10, but we also have that Pivot Pro with the model number already configured because it's matching the FLAs and the voltages to make sure that we have the right option. We can include that alarm panel option as well, and we'll just hit add to drawing. If you aren't quite sure, you don't fully trust us, you want to do some vetting on your own, you can hit that view spec sheet and it'll pop open the manufacturer's cut sheet for the product, and you can review any of those features that we talked about today. And we'll hit add to drawing. And look at that, in a matter of seconds, we are done. And I'm going to move this so I can hit the complete button. Now, I wanted to get this back up to the top because it was my SP1. So I'm going to change the sequence to 1. I'm going to go SP1, called it with panel and alarm. And I'm going to hit save. I could add in any additional notes about Z control or alternates or anything like that. Hit save. It's going to pop it up to the top. And then I'll hit download. And you can download it in any one of the 10 different formats that you need from our system. You could get the Revit files. You could get your CSA 3-part specs. You could get your schedule in Excel format, various long specs, the manufacturer spec sheet, and the submittals. We'll download the long spec, and I'm going to exclude page formatting, another new feature on the site. If you're familiar with our old formatting and have adopted it, great. We also wanted to provide a file type that limited the formatting, like the indenting and bullets and all that, just so that it's easier to grab and go and pop into your spec. So I'll open that up, and you can see no page formatting. You could just go hit copy, Control-C, paste it into your own internal documentation. I've got the submittal package open here as well. So you can see the important information included in here, our panel information. If you wanted more detail, we've got the manufacturer spec sheet with a nice table of contents, the models that were specified, and all the critical details that you need from the manufacturer spec sheet. Now, one thing we've done with a number of firms is set up their masters. So if you do have a standard set of pumps that you include on your master document, you could have like your firm specific master, or an example here, our mechanical room master. And then all you have to do is copy over, hit copy to, put in the project name that we had talked about. So we were looking at the pivot panel, and you could copy all these products into the current project, and again, be done in a matter of minutes. So that's the very quick version of the site tour. Any more questions that came in? So we did have a couple of questions come in. This be compatible on any pump supplied by others and on any voltage? So I think that's actually one of the great questions. Is this just for Zoeller pumps, or could this go on any other manufacturer's pumps?
Okay, so should I give you the Zoeller answer?
I think let's give the real world answer.
So real world, the panel has no way of knowing. We could potentially build in, a sensor for Zoeller pumps. That's like a Keurig, with the K cups, and only allow official K cups. No, we don't do anything like that. So you just have to make sure you're being careful. Obviously, when we have them matched up and we've got them in ranges for the amps and everything. So if you're gonna use somebody else's pump or use our panel on an existing station or something, you definitely want to just be careful that you're speccing it right.
Yeah, and the key attributes there, that'd be your amps, match the voltage, right? Like those are your key concerns.
Phase, voltage, amps. If you're going to be able to use. So here's a little secret. Not about to not be a secret. We've built in some things to the panel, to the menuing system, where if somebody was using a competitor's pump that had thermals, I'm just giving this as an example, all of our thermals are normally closed, but maybe there's a competitor that has a thermal that's normally open. If that were the case, we actually have something in the menu that allows you to change the alert on closure instead of open. So it's, we've tried to think of, making it as flexible as possible, including not, it not being paired up with a Zoeller pump. So.
Perfect. All right, well, any other questions coming in from chat? Otherwise, I will thank you all for your time today and joining us on this session. That was fantastic, Jeff. I appreciated getting to see it. I think that the video that you provided partway through is fantastic. Always nice to actually see the product, which you can't always get in these webinars. But hey, look at us. We're so far forward in tech. We've got Z Control. We've got video on our webinars. Look at us.
Yeah, and it's a good point also to point out that we've done other webinars that your customers are welcome to view on our web pages too. So like if they're wondering what the Z Control is all about, we just did a Z Control webinar. I think it was last month or the month before. So more than happy to, or you're more than welcome to find those on our site.
And of course, as with any of these, if you would like a deeper dive specific for your firm, feel free to reach out. I or Mo or Nat will be happy to get you set up with the Zoeller team, and we can have a discussion on the product and whether it's updating your master or just providing more detail on the panels or Z Control, anything like that. So with that, thank you for your time, Jeff. Thank you for the time from all the people that joined us today. Hope it was a great session and you enjoyed your time with ATS University. We'll have all the follow-up out with your certificate of attendance coming shortly. And if you want to reference back to the presentation, that'll be hosted on our website as well with the product selection tool. So thank you for your time. Have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.